Everybody, this is Satya Mallick, and today I'm going to talk to Brad Davis, who has just contributed an awesome leaf segmentation model to Modelplace.AI. And we are going to talk to him about his experience, his background, and how he, who has no experience in AI prior to taking on this project, was able to make this important contribution. Brad, welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So I would like you to briefly describe your background and how you got interested in AI.
Yeah, sure. So really my background is in front-end development that I've been doing for a while, doing JavaScript, front-end applications. And I worked, I had kind of this hobby on the side of doing gardening kind of stuff, and wanted to start, connecting technology and gardening. Was interested in that kind of world at the kind of like home level, right? So I had a Raspberry Pi I was taking pictures with of the plants that I was growing, and then had this data set of images. And then eventually I was working at a company that was doing machine learning and started thinking like, well, let's see what kind of machine learning stuff I can do with this data set that I have. And it kind of went from there and ended up being more than just images that I had done. I added to it a lot.
Interesting. Your interest in gardening basically led you to just use a Raspberry Pi camera, and you started taking pictures without actually having a very clear idea what you were going to do with this data. You just wanted to see your plants grow and maybe build a model for growth of the plant or something.
Yeah, I was initially kind of looking into what kind of automations I could do, and what looking
like watering the plants or something like that.
Watering the plants and notifications, kind of like when they're ready to be planted or something like that.
That's great.
Very open-ended, very like let's just see what happens kind of thing.
So you collected this data set. Give us a sense of how big is the data set, because you collected it from scratch.
Yeah. So I'd say I was collecting images. I guess it's grown and shrunk and then grown. The initial one, when it was just plants I had, was probably got up to like 150 of my own plants, and then but they were all very similar because I'm taking this picture of the same plants. So I think from there I kind of weeded it down to like good images of different stages of the plant, and then started adding in images from Google and other research projects. And then it kind of grew to, it's really, probably a data set of 300, I think the last time I checked it was 370 labeled images. I have, I think 600, but I think I've only labeled like around 370 so far.
Great. So just so people know, what does the model do? So your model is now part of Modelplace.ai. What does it exactly do, so that people,
Sure.
we'll be talking about, we just started talking about the data without explaining what the model does.
Yeah, so it's a very specific, it does a very specific thing. It takes like a regular image and does instant segmentation and identifies individual leaves in that picture. And like I think we said before, or we were talking about earlier, specifically broad leaves. So very specific leaf kind of shape.
So a good example would be spinach leaf. You would be able to detect and segment spinach leaf, the outline of the leaf, you would be able to say. And it's also individual leaves, right? You are able to segment individual leaves out and say that this leaf is different from that leaf. And things like, give us a few examples. Like spinach is an example. What other leaves?
Spinach is one I know was part of the data set. I think I want to say tomato leaves. There were some pumpkin leaves. Basil was used. And I think those might be the core the core plants I use, and then I kind of had added. So that was like big chunks of the leaves are those of the data set is those, and then I added some mint, some kind of like random other plants to give it a little more variety. And that was kind of the part where I was playing with, the size of the data set, how many images I should use from each one. That's where I spent a lot of my time, just kind of playing with, how variable that data set should be.
And you embarked on this project without any background in computer vision or AI. What motivated you? I mean, the gardening obviously motivated you, but then you experimented with various tools, right? Various frameworks.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your journey through that. What did you try? What did you settle on?
Yeah, so once I had those images, I had done just enough Python to be like dangerous, right? So I could write a Python script and run it, and it wouldn't fail. That's where I kind of started, and then I think I started doing I started looking at images and just picking out here's counting how many green pixels and how many brown pixels, and kind of looking at leaves from a very
you
basic.
were doing a very traditional image processing without learning. Yeah.
I couldn't really tell you libraries I used, but it started at that level, and then it kind of sat for the project sat for a while, just because it got to a certain level where analysis kind of got to a point where as far as I could go with basic data science, scikit-learn kind of stuff. I think I started using scikit-learn without machine learning, and you could do some stuff, but not enough that you needed, not the accuracy you needed for automation.
Right.
So it kind of got to a point where I was like, that's interesting. Put that aside for a little bit, and then I think the next step was just kind of seeing, machine learning image analysis demos and stuff, and seeing, kind of getting that kernel of oh, this kind of stuff is doable. I've been interested in it for a while, just because I'm interested in image analysis, because it's something that I think really took it to the next level. I think that's a great example of, if you're going to pitch somebody on machine learning, I think you would really want to tell them about what you can do with images, because it's something you could not do 10 years before. That's kind of what I like about it.
The other thing is cameras are everywhere, right? And they are very inexpensive. They are everywhere, and you can deploy them without annoying anybody, right? I mean, typically you would not deploy a microphone because it usually doesn't do anything. Image data is much more interesting in that sense.
Yeah.
You can do a lot more.
Yeah. So yeah, it was and then again, it was kind of combining interests, where I had this gardening stuff going on, added a little bit of technology, and then started adding in machine learning, or adding in data science, I guess, was the next one, and then machine learning, kind of just kept growing and becoming more useful.
So, and then you settle on PyTorch, and train this model from scratch using Detectron 2. Yeah.
I had done a couple other I played around with object detection for a while, and I think I started out in TensorFlow. I think I can't remember what the first thing was, but started out getting into that TensorFlow, kind of the whole ecosystem that they have, and then knew that there was a lot of stuff going on the PyTorch side, and the Detectron 2. I think it was when Detectron, the actual second version, came out. They had to demo, and it was just so easy to take the data and move it over to Detectron 2. It kind of worked out of the box. That was I think this is the way to go. TensorFlow, I always ended up having to tinker with things, and it wasn't really, I guess, my cup of tea. It wasn't really the thing that really was driving me.
Right, and I'm guessing that at that time TensorFlow 2 was not out. So TensorFlow 2
that could be
is a much nicer framework, in my opinion, than the first version.
So I do remember I was using Keras at the time, which is a great interface, and it's a great library in itself. And I think they kind of rolled that into it.
Yeah.
TensorFlow too, I believe.
So you picked PyTorch, and then when did you decide that, oh, I want to make this a serious attempt at this? And how did you learn about Modelplace.ai?
Yeah, so was tinkering, and then saw a post on Hacker News that you guys is like, hey, here's this thing we're working on, sign up. I signed up and I heard from you guys. And, we kind of started having conversations about, what it would be and kind of what, basically what kind of stuff both of us were working on and how it was a good fit. And then I was like, okay, well, I mean, these guys are serious. I kind of have to be serious too. And that's kind of where I was like, okay, let's, I kind of have to like stop tinkering and think about it as like as a product of like, what do I want? If somebody's going to use this, what do I want them to do and how are they going to use it? And then ended up doing instance segmentation and doing a lot more labeling. And that's where it really started to kick off, and really the most results really were from switching to instant segmentation and chatting with you guys just about like thinking about it from like a perspective of a product.
That's great. And how was your experience, taking your model that you had and making it available through Modelplace.ai? Experience working with the team, how would you rate it? Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost been like a course in like how to go to production with a machine learning model, because I really was like, I just was kind of tinkering around with stuff, and I kind of like there was multiple iterations of me putting something out there and sending it to you guys, and then you guys being, okay, this looks really good, but we need these things, we need this thing to work like this, we need this to work like this. And then I'd be, okay, I got it, don't worry about it. And I go and do some stuff, and then I come back and be like, oh, here, I got it. Okay, yeah. Cool. Now we need to work on this thing. And then
optimization and other things also, right?
There was optimization, there was testing that I hadn't thought about. There was licensing, there was all sorts of different stuff. There was like creating a interface that you guys already had. Like you guys already came with this interface of like a Python interface of like how to how the data needs to look uniform,
right,
and useful. That was just like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense. You definitely would have to have that. So there's all sorts of stuff across the board that kind of like walked me through getting a model in production now. Yeah,
that's great. So yeah, I'm so glad. It was really great talking to you. We learned a lot that, it's about initiative. If you think about it, if you, without a background in AI, you learned all the necessary stuff, and even working with our team, you were still learning and you were able to do something. You brought it to completion, right? So it's really an accomplishment to start from scratch and bring something to completion and be out there in public with your model being published on Modelplace.ai. So that's really good.
I'm excited too. And really, I mean, I don't think it would have, I don't think I ever would have come to completion without Modelplace. So there's a bunch of little things that, I would still be tinkering around with stuff, if it wasn't for you guys. So thanks.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening. And I just want to say that if you are a developer, if you're building a model, creating a model for a specific task, we would love to hear from you, and we would love to publish your model on Modelplace.ai. That's all we wanted to cover in this. Thank you so much.